I was having tea with an elderly gentleman some time ago, someone who had lived a very full and successful life. He was in his 80s, wealthy, respected, surrounded by a loving family, at peace with himself. And I asked him, if you had to share the secret to a good life, what would it be? And he smiled, took a sip of his tea, and said something so simple yet so profound that it stayed with me ever since. He said, young man, if you can master 3 things, you can master your life. Control your mouth, control your mind, and control your money. Everything else will fall into place. At first I thought, is that it? Just 3 things? It seemed almost too simple. But the more I reflected on it, the more I observed people's lives, including my own, the more I realized the profound wisdom in those words. Most of the problems we face, most of the pain we experience, most of the chaos in our lives can be traced back to losing control in one of these 3 areas. Today I want to share with you why these 3 things matter so deeply and how mastering them can transform your entire existence. Let's start with the mouth. Such a small organ, isn't it? And yet it has the power to create and destroy, to heal and to wound, to build bridges and to burn them. The ancient scriptures say that life and death are in the power of the tongue, and oh how true that is. Your mouth, your words, they shape your reality in ways you may not even realize. Think about how many relationships have been destroyed by words spoken in anger, words that cannot be taken back. How many opportunities have been lost because someone spoke at the wrong time or said the wrong thing? How many reputations have been ruined? How many hearts have been broken? How many lives have been altered because someone couldn't control their mouth? And yet we're so careless with our words, aren't we? We speak without thinking. We react without pausing. We say things we don't mean. We share things we shouldn't. And then we wonder why our lives are filled with drama and difficulty. Controlling your mouth means several things. First, it means thinking before you speak. This sounds obvious, but how often do we actually do it? We're emotional creatures. Something happens, we feel something, and immediately words come tumbling out. Someone criticizes us and we snap back. Someone shares gossip and we add to it. Someone provokes us and we retaliate. But the wise person creates space between feeling and speaking. They pause, they breathe, they ask themselves, is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? And only then do they speak. I remember a teacher once telling me, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. At the first gate, ask yourself, is it true? At the second gate, ask, is it necessary? At the third gate, ask, is it kind? If the answer to any of these is no, then don't say it. Imagine how different your relationships would be if you apply this filter to everything you said. Imagine how much unnecessary conflict would be avoided, how much hurt would be prevented, how much peace would be created. Controlling your mouth also means knowing when not to speak. Silence is underrated in our world. We think we need to have an opinion on everything. We need to respond to everything. We need to be heard in every conversation. But sometimes the wisest thing you can do is say nothing. When someone is angry and trying to provoke you, silence. When someone is sharing gossip, silence. When you're about to say something you'll regret, silence. There's tremendous power in the ability to keep your mouth shut when opening it would cause harm. I've seen people destroy their careers, their marriages, their friendships because they couldn't stop themselves from saying that one thing, that sarcastic comment, that unnecessary criticism, that secret they promised to keep, that opinion nobody asked for, and afterwards they always say the same thing. I wish I hadn't said that. I don't know why I opened my mouth. Well, the reason is lack of control. The mouth was driving and wisdom was sleeping, but controlling your mouth isn't just about not saying harmful things. It's also about speaking positively, speaking with purpose, speaking with power. Your words create your world. When you constantly complain, you create a reality of dissatisfaction. When you constantly criticize, you create a reality of negativity. When you constantly speak doubt, you create a reality of limitation. But when you speak with gratitude, with encouragement, with faith, with vision, you create a completely different reality. Pay attention to what comes out of your mouth regularly. Are you someone who complains all the time? About the weather, about the traffic, about your job, about your circumstances? Every complaint is a declaration of powerlessness. It's saying, I'm a victim of the situation. But when you train yourself to speak solutions instead of problems, to speak gratitude instead of complaints, to speak possibilities instead of limitations, you begin to change not just your mindset but your actual circumstances. Also, control what you speak about yourself. So many people defeat themselves with their own words. I'm so stupid, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I always mess things up, I'm just unlucky. You're programming yourself with these words. You're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between truth and repeated statement. If you keep telling yourself you're incapable, you will behave in ways that confirm that belief. But if you speak to yourself with encouragement, with belief, with positive expectation, you program yourself for success. Now, let's move to the second thing, controlling your mind. If the mouth is powerful, the mind is even more so, because the mouth speaks what the mind thinks. Everything begins in the mind. Every action you take, every word you speak, every emotion you feel, it all originates in your mind. Your mind is the control center of your entire life. And if the control center is chaos, your entire life will be chaos. But here's the problem, most people have never been taught to control their minds. We are taught to read and write, to do mathematics, to memorize facts, but nobody teaches us how to manage our thoughts, how to direct our attention, how to calm our minds when they're racing. And so we go through life with minds that are like wild horses, pulling us in every direction, trampling over our peace, our focus, our clarity. Controlling your mind starts with understanding that you are not your thoughts. This is a revolutionary realization. You have thoughts, but you are not those thoughts. Thoughts arise, they pass through, they disappear. Some are useful, some are not. Some are true, some are false. Some serve you, some harm you. And you have the ability to observe your thoughts, to choose which ones to engage with and which ones to let go. Most people are completely identified with their thoughts. A thought of worry arises and they become worried. A thought of anger arises and they become angry. A thought of inadequacy arises and they believe they're inadequate. They're like a leaf in a stream, carried wherever the current of thoughts takes them. But when you learn to observe your thoughts, to create distance between your awareness and your thinking, you gain tremendous power. You can watch a thought of worry arise and say, that's just a worried thought. I don't have to believe it or act on it. You can watch a thought of anger arise and let it pass without reacting. This is what meditation teaches us, by the way. It's not about stopping thoughts, that's impossible. It's about changing your relationship with your thoughts. It's about becoming the observer rather than the victim of your mental activity. And this skill, this ability to control your mind rather than being controlled by it, is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop. Think about how much suffering is created by an uncontrolled mind. You're lying in bed at night and your mind is racing with worries about the future or regrets about the past. You can't sleep. You're exhausted, but your mind won't shut up. Or you're trying to work on something important, but your mind keeps wandering to distractions, to social media, to irrelevant thoughts. Or someone says something to you and your mind immediately creates a story about what they meant, assumes the worst, and now you're really angry about something that might not even be true. An uncontrolled mind is like a house with all the windows and doors open. Everything blows in, every thought, every worry, every fear, every distraction. But when you learn to control your mind, it's like closing those doors and windows. You decide what comes in. You guard your mental space. You protect your peace. Controlling your mind also means controlling what you feed it. Your mind is constantly consuming information, and this information shapes your thoughts, your beliefs, your perspective. If you're constantly consuming negative news, violent content, gossip, comparison-inducing social media, your mind becomes a reflection of that. It becomes anxious, fearful, jealous, disturbed. But if you're intentional about what you consume, if you feed your mind positive, uplifting, educational, inspiring content, Your mind becomes clearer, calmer, more focused, more positive. I often tell people, be as careful with what you put in your mind as you are with what you put in your body. You wouldn't eat garbage and expect to be healthy, would you? So why would you consume mental garbage and expect to have a healthy mind? Choose your content carefully. Choose your conversations carefully. Choose what you expose yourself to carefully. Because all of it is shaping your mind, and your mind is shaping your life. Another crucial aspect of controlling your mind is controlling your focus. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources, perhaps the most valuable. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. If you constantly focus on problems, you'll see only problems. If you focus on what's wrong in your life, that's all you'll experience. But if you train yourself to focus on solutions, on opportunities, on gratitude, on what's working, you literally change your experience of life. This doesn't mean ignoring real problems. It means not dwelling on them. It means acknowledging them and then shifting focus to what you can do about them. It means training your mind to look for the good even in difficult situations. It means consciously directing your attention to what serves you, rather than letting your attention be hijacked by every negative thing that happens. And let me tell you, this is hard. This requires practice. Your mind has been conditioned over years, maybe decades, to think in certain patterns, to worry, to doubt, to fear, to compare, or criticize. These patterns are like grooves in a record. Your thoughts keep running in the same grooves. But you can create new grooves through consistent practice, through meditation, through mindfulness, through conscious thought redirection, through affirmations, through whatever practice works for you. Gradually, slowly, you can train your mind to serve you rather than torment you. Now let's talk about the third thing, controlling your money. Money is energy. It's a tool. It's a resource. And how you manage it reflects how you manage your life. People often think that money problems are about not having enough money. But I've seen people with very little money manage it beautifully, and people with vast wealth squander it foolishly. The issue is not how much you have. The issue is how much control you have over what you have. Controlling your money means, first and foremost, living within your means. This sounds basic, but look around and you'll see how few people actually do this. We live in a culture that encourages spending, that equates happiness with consumption, that makes you feel inadequate if you're not constantly upgrading, buying, acquiring. And so people spend more than they earn. They go into debt. They live paycheck to paycheck even when they have good incomes. They have no savings, no investments, no financial cushion. And then they wonder why they're stressed, why they feel trapped, why they can't sleep at night. There's a simple principle: spend less than you earn. Save the difference. Invest the savings. Do this consistently over time and you will build wealth, security, freedom. But it requires control. It requires saying no to impulses. It requires delayed gratification. It requires going against the cultural current that's constantly telling you to buy, to upgrade, to keep up with others. I've met people who earn modest incomes but have saved and invested consistently and now have financial freedom. And I've met people who earned enormous salaries but spent everything and more. And despite their high income, they're in financial stress. The difference is control. One group controlled their money. The other group let their money, or rather their desires and impulses, control them. Controlling your money also means understanding the difference between assets and liabilities, between investments and expenses. So many people think they're being smart with money when they're actually making poor choices. They buy a luxury car thinking it's an asset when it's actually a depreciating liability that costs them money every month. They buy a big house they can barely afford thinking it's an investment when the mortgage is draining them. They spend on things that lose value instead of investing in things that gain value. Real wealth is built through assets, through things that put money in your pocket rather than take money out. Whether it's financial investments, whether it's skills and education that increase your earning capacity, whether it's a business, whether it's real estate that appreciates and generates income, The wealthy understand this. They focus on acquiring assets. The financially struggling focus on acquiring things that look impressive but drain their resources. There's also this important aspect of controlling money, having a plan. Most people have no financial plan, they just react. Money comes in, money goes out, and there's no intentionality, no strategy, no goals. But when you control your money, you have a plan. You know how much you need for essentials, how much you're saving, how much you're investing, how much you can spend on discretionary things. You have financial goals, short-term and long-term. You're directing your money purposefully, rather than just letting it slip through your fingers. And let me address something that's often not talked about, the emotional aspect of money. So much of our spending is emotional. We're sad, so we shop. We're stressed, so we buy something to feel better. We feel inadequate, so we buy things to impress others. We're bored, so we browse online stores. We see others with something, and we feel we need it too. This is not controlled spending, this is emotional spending, and it's a fast track to financial problems. Controlling your money means understanding your emotional triggers around spending. It means creating a gap between feeling an impulse to buy and actually buying. It means asking yourself, do I really need this? Am I buying this for a good reason or an emotional reason? Will I still want this in a week? Is this purchase aligned with my financial goals? These questions create consciousness around your spending, and consciousness is the beginning of control. I also want to talk about the relationship between these three things because they're deeply interconnected. When you don't control your mouth, you create relationship problems, professional problems, reputation problems, and these problems create mental stress, anxiety, regret. And this mental disturbance often leads to poor financial decisions because you're not thinking clearly. You might make impulsive purchases to feel better. You might not be able to focus on work and your income suffers. You might damage professional relationships that affect your career. Similarly, when you don't control your mind, when it's constantly worried, distracted, anxious, you say things you shouldn't say because you're not in a calm, clear state, and you make poor financial decisions because your judgment is clouded. You might panic and sell investments at the wrong time. You might avoid dealing with financial issues because thinking about them creates anxiety. You might make impulse purchases to escape your mental disturbance. And when you can't control your money, when you're in financial stress, it affects your mind. You're constantly worried, you can't focus, you're anxious about the future. And this mental state affects what comes out of your mouth. You're irritable, you snap at people, you can't be present in conversations because you're mentally preoccupied with money stress. So you see, these three things form a triangle. Strength in one area supports the others. Weakness in one area undermines the others. But when you have control over all three, when you're managing your mouth, your mind, and your money, well, life becomes remarkably different. You have peace, you have clarity, you have stability, you have the foundation upon which everything else can be built. Now, let me be practical with you about how to actually develop this control, because understanding the importance is one thing, but implementing it is another. Let's start with the mouth. Practice the pause. When you feel an urge to speak, especially in emotional moments, pause, count to 3, take a breath. This tiny gap between impulse and action is where wisdom lives. In that gap, you can choose your words instead of being driven by emotion. Also, practice mindful speaking for one day. Just one day where you pay attention to every word that comes out of your mouth. Notice when you're about to complain and choose not to. Notice when you're about to speak negatively about someone and choose silence or something constructive instead. Notice when you're about to react defensively and choose a calm response. One day of this practice will show you how much unnecessary speaking you do and how much power you have to choose differently. For the mind, start with just 5 minutes of meditation daily. You don't need to be perfect at it. Just sit quietly, focus on your breath, and when your mind wanders, which it will, gently bring it back. This simple practice, done consistently, trains your mind to be more under your control. It creates the observer, the part of you that can watch thoughts without being consumed by them. Also, practice thought replacement. When you notice a negative thought pattern starting, consciously replace it with something better. Worried thought arises? Replace it with a thought about what you're grateful for. Self-critical thought arises? Replace it with a reminder of something you did well. This isn't about toxic positivity or denying reality. It's about training your mind to have balance, to not get stuck in negative loops. For money, start by tracking your spending for 1 month. Every single expense, write it down or use an app. Just the act of tracking creates awareness. You'll be shocked at where your money actually goes versus where you think it goes. From this awareness, you can make informed decisions about what to change. Then, create a simple budget. Know your income. List your essential expenses. Decide on a savings purse. And touch, even if it's small to start. Whatever is left is what you have for discretionary spending. And stick to it. This simple structure creates control. You're telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Let me also say this. Developing control in these 3 areas is not about becoming rigid or joyless. It's not about never speaking, never thinking freely, never spending money. It's about being intentional rather than reactive. It's about making conscious choices rather than being driven by impulses. It's about having your mouth, mind, and money serve your highest good rather than derail you. There will be times you slip. You'll say something you regret. Your mind will spiral into worry. You'll make an impulse purchase. This is part of being human. The key is not perfection. The key is awareness and course correction. When you slip, you notice, you learn, you adjust, and you continue. Over time, with practice, control becomes easier. It becomes more natural. It becomes who you are rather than something you're trying to do. I want to close with this thought. That elderly gentleman who shared this wisdom with me, he told me one more thing. He said, "You know why most people struggle in life? Because they're trying to control everything except these 3 things. They're trying to control other people, trying to control circumstances, trying to control outcomes. But the only things you truly have control over are your mouth, your mind, and your money. Master these and you'll find that everything else starts falling into place. Not because you're controlling, but because you're no longer creating chaos in these fundamental areas. Your mouth shapes your relationships, your reputation, your reality through the words you speak. Your mind shapes your experience, your emotions, your actions through the thoughts you think. Your money shapes your options, your security, your freedom through how you manage it. These are the 3 pillars upon which your life rests. Strengthen them and everything you build upon them becomes stable. Neglect them and everything becomes shaky no matter how much you try to fix other things. So I invite you, starting today, to pay attention. Notice what comes out of your mouth. Notice what goes on in your mind. Notice what happens with your money. And in that noticing, you'll find the beginning of control. And in that control, you'll find the beginning of a life that's more peaceful, more purposeful, more powerful than you've experienced before. Control your mouth, control your mind, control your money. Master these 3 and you master the art of living well.